So those people on Palm Sunday were so excited about the Lord. And wouldn't it be great if we could be that excited? When was the last time that any of us were prepared to shout and cheer for the Lord? Wouldn't it be nice if we could be that confident? And of course, those people in that reading who shouted and cheered and were so confident didn't necessarily have the clearest ideas about who the Lord was or what he was going to do. They called him the King of Israel, and presumably a lot of them meant that very literally. But the Lord never became the literal earthly king of Israel. And being excited about something that turns out not to be real does kind of knock the wind out of the excitement. The thing is, the Lord has given us the teachings that we need to understand who he really is. And who he really is far more wonderful than being a literal king. So we can learn something from that crowd that celebrated the Lord on Palm Sunday. Their ideas might have been off track, but their actions were dead on. They held up palm branches and they declared truths about the Lord. And the things that they said were true, even if they didn't entirely understand them. And we can do the same thing. Literally holding up palm branches and literally shouting isn't as important as capturing the spirit that we see in that Palm Sunday story. A spirit that declares wonderful truths about the Lord. Something that can help us understand that spirit a little better is the symbolism of palm branches. Palm branches are actually only mentioned in the Gospel of John, which we just read. The Gospels of Matthew and Mark both mention that people laid down branches to make a path for the Lord, but they don't specify that they were palms. But nobody ever pictures anything other than palm branches. After all, it's called Palm Sunday. And the teachings of the new church confirm that the symbolism of palms is important to this story. We might be tempted to think that people chose palm branches for practical reasons, because a palm branch is fairly flat, so if you put it down in someone's path, it makes a carpet rather than a barrier. And that might have had something to do with it, but it's also clear that people understood, even at the time, that there was symbolism in palm branches. And one piece of evidence in support of this is that the ancient Israelites were told to use palm branches during some of their religious celebrations. So here's some of the instructions that they were given in the book of Leviticus pertaining to a festival called the Feast of Tabernacles. We read from Leviticus 23. Also, on the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the fruit of the land, you shall keep the feast of the Lord for 7 days. On the first day there shall be a Sabbath rest, and on the 8th day a Sabbath rest. And you shall take for yourselves on the first day the fruit of the tree of honor, branches of palm trees, the boughs of leafy trees, and willows of the brook, and you shall rejoice before the Lord your God for 7 days. So people were told to rejoice before the Lord, holding the fruit of the tree of honor and 3 different kinds of branches, including palm branches. And it's pretty clear that they would never have been given such specific instructions unless those different kinds of fruits and branches symbolized something. And the next reading is a passage from the Heavenly Doctrine of the New Church, from the book Apocalypse Explained, about the specific meaning of these different trees. And the first part of this reading is going to review the meaning of all 4 different trees that were mentioned. And then the second part is going to focus specifically on the meaning of palm branches. You can follow along in the worship handout if you wish. We read from Apocalypse Explained. Because the Feast of Tabernacles symbolized the implantation of good by means of truths, it was commanded that they should then take the fruit of the tree of honor, leaves of palm trees, and the boughs of thick trees and willows of the brook, and should be glad before Jehovah 7 days. The fruit of the tree of honor symbolizes heavenly good. Palm trees symbolize spiritual good, that is, the good of truth. Boughs of thick trees symbolize factual truth with its good, and willows of the brook symbolize the lowest truths and goods of the natural person, which belong to external, sensual things. Thus, these four symbolize all goods and truths in their order, from first to last in a person. Because palms symbolize spiritual good, and from spiritual good is all joy of the heart, for spiritual good is the affection itself, or the love of spiritual truth. Therefore, people used to testify to their joy of heart, and also that they were acting from good, by means of palms in their hands. And this is the symbolism of the following. Many who came to the feast when they heard that Jesus was coming to Jerusalem took branches of palm trees and went forth to meet him, and cried out, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, the King of Israel." Amen. There are two ideas that we're going to draw out of that reading and focus on. The first is that palm branches symbolize spiritual good, which is the good of truth. And the second is that people used to use palm branches to testify to their joy of heart. These two ideas are, of course, connected, and the connection between them captures the spirit that we see in today's story. There's something there about truth and something there about testifying to or declaring that truth. And the spirit that we're talking about today is a spirit that puts those two things together. So palm branches symbolize the good of truth. The good of truth means good that comes from truth. So the good of truth is the good that comes of doing what the truth says to do, the good that comes of doing what you know to be right. We sometimes call our ideas good, and that's a fine way of talking, but it's a little bit misleading, because actually ideas by themselves never accomplish anything good. It's only when we act on them that they can have a positive effect on the world. So it's when they're put into action that ideas or truths become good. The good of truth is simply truth that we bring to life. And so palm branches fundamentally represent truths or true ideas, but they represent truths that we love enough to do something with them. And when we do what we know to be right, we feel happy. And so the reading says that all joy of heart is from spiritual good. For spiritual good is the love of spiritual truth. When we love spiritual truth, we do it, and when we do it, the result is good, and that good makes us happy. All of this is what palm branches symbolize. And the reading says that because of this symbolism, people in ancient times would hold up palm branches to testify to their joy of heart, to testify or bear witness to the joy that comes from believing in and living a truth. And that's why the people chose palms when the Lord rode into Jerusalem. They may not have understood all of the symbolism that we've just gone over, but they knew some of these things. At least they knew, because it was written in the Old Testament and because it was an ancient custom, that palm branches were a special symbol for a religious celebration. Elsewhere in the heavenly doctrine, the symbolism of palm branches is explained just a little differently. There's a passage in the book Apocalypse Revealed that says that holding palm branches in the hands symbolizes confessions springing from divine truths, because palm branches symbolize divine truths. That statement has all of the same basic components of that longer reading from Apocalypse Explained. Palm branches symbolize something having to do with truths and something having to do with testifying to or declaring that truth. But the word confession is one that we need to take time to understand. A confession means a heartfelt acknowledgement of something. And nowadays, people mostly use that word when they're talking about people acknowledging the bad things that they've done. So normally we say people would confess their sins or confess to their crimes. But the word doesn't have to have such a narrow meaning. It doesn't always have to be about bad things. We can confess good things too. And when the word or the heavenly doctrine talks about confessing the Lord, or as that passage says, about confessions springing from divine truths, it's talking about a heartfelt acknowledgement of who the Lord is and what he does. And what he does is really, really good. And so confessing the Lord really has much the same meaning as thanking him and also praising him. And with all of these ideas in mind, you can maybe start to see the overlap between confessions springing from divine truths and testifying to your joy of heart. Those two phrases between them capture the spirit of Palm Sunday, and they express the symbolism, the thing that's symbolized by holding up those palm branches to the Lord. All of the details in the Palm Sunday story symbolize things that have to do with truth. We just talked about the symbolism of the palm branches. The garments that people laid down to make a path for the Lord and put on the donkey for him to sit on also symbolize truths, our own truths or our own ideas which we lay down before him. We're told that when the disciples put their garments on the donkey beneath the Lord, this represented the recognition that truths in their entirety were the foundation on which the Lord, as supreme judge and king, rested. The donkey itself was a symbol that the Lord was the supreme judge and king. And again, that was symbolism that the people who were there at the time would have been aware of. In ancient Israel, judges and kings rode on donkeys, and the people saw that, and so they shouted out, "The King of Israel." And in the heavenly doctrine, we're told that the title king, in reference to the Lord, symbolizes divine truth. All of the arrows in this story point towards truth. Palm Sunday is all about celebrating truths. And what truths did the people declare when the Lord rode into Jerusalem? There are two that come to mind. They called him the King of Israel, and he is a king. He is the King of heaven and of all creation. But before they called him king, they cried out, "Hosanna." And Hosanna means save us. And by shouting that, they were declaring that the Lord had the power to save them, They were acknowledging that he could save them. And so they were declaring the same truth that's declared by that multitude in the recitation from Revelation, the multitude who held palm branches and cried out, "Salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb." The Lord is King, and salvation is his. Within the context of Christianity, these truths are kind of a given. If you've grown up in the church, you've heard these things your whole life long. They're basic teachings of the church. But think about the difference between knowing these truths and confessing them, lifting them up to testify to your joy of heart because you love these truths and you're willing to live in their light. Take the truth that salvation is the Lord's. We need the Lord to save us. If we know this truth, but we don't confess it, we don't lift it up, then it's maybe not such a joyful truth. It can maybe even make us feel anxious, because what if the Lord doesn't save us? We'd better cross all of our spiritual T's and dot all of our spiritual I's so that we can secure his salvation. But we can hold that truth so differently. Salvation is the Lord's. He has all power in heaven and on earth to save us, to make us safe. And that power can be with us now. He can save our souls. He can surround our souls with safety. Safety that the world cannot touch. Confess that truth. Testify to it with joy. Hosanna. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Or take the truth that the Lord is king. The Lord is in charge. He's the boss and we're not. And so on and so on. We can know that truth and find no joy in it. We can even resent it because it means that we should probably do what he says. But the truth that the Lord is king is a truth worth celebrating. Because if he's in charge of this crazy world, then the world isn't as crazy as it seems. Sure, there's a lot that goes wrong, and we sure can't fix all of it. But if the Lord is king, then there is something good reigning over all of this, and justice will prevail in the end, because a divine king would never permit it to be otherwise. That's a truth that we can celebrate. This particular church, the Pittsburgh New Church, hasn't historically been one in which people shout out praises during worship. And that's fine. There's lots of different ways of worshiping, and they all have their own merits. We don't need to literally shout out our praises, but we are supposed to do more with the truth than think about it. Just because we know an idea, just because we've heard it 100 times, doesn't mean we get it. Ultimately, we're supposed to do what the truth teaches us to do. But while we're on that road, it's also good to look for and celebrate the goodness of those basic teachings about the Lord and his kingdom. Confess them. Rejoice in them. That's something we can do together in Sunday worship, when we pray together, when we sing together. And it's also something that we're called to do individually, in our prayers and with our lives. Do we lift up those palm branches in our spirits? Do we cry, Hosanna to the Lord? Amen.